All right, let's dive in. Today we're exploring Spiritism.
Sounds intriguing.
It is. We're going deep into the core ideas from Allan Kardec's Spiritism Easily Explained.
Kardec, the big name in Spiritism.
Exactly. Think of this as your cheat sheet to understanding what Spiritism is all about.
That's helpful. I've always been curious about it.
And we're lucky to have you with us to help break it down. Now, this book isn't just about spooky spirits or anything like that, is it?
Not at all. It's more about how those ideas connect to us, to how we live and act.
So it's about personal growth.
Absolutely. It's about taking what we learn from the spirit world and applying it to become better people, make the world better too.
I like that. That's actionable.
Very much so.
Speaking of action, one thing that jumped out at me was Kardec's definition of a true spiritist. It's not just about believing, right?
Right. He makes it clear a true spiritist doesn't just say, oh, spirits exist. They actually use the wisdom from those spirits to improve themselves and, like we said, make a positive impact.
So putting those teachings into practice in everyday life.
Exactly.
And to do that, you kind of need a roadmap. Kardec lays out what he calls the venomous plants of the soul.
Oh, yes. Selfishness, pride, vanity, the whole works. Almost like a checklist of what not to do.
And that's where the self-improvement comes in.
You got it. Recognizing those flaws is the first step, right? I think we all struggle with those venomous plants from time to time. What about you? Which one resonates most?
Tough one. I think for me, it's got to be selfishness. It's like the root of so many other problems.
That's interesting. It's like the opposite of what Spiritism is all about.
Yeah, and Kardec actually provides antidotes for these venomous plants.
He does. And it's not complicated rituals or anything. It's about cultivating things like charity and humility.
Simple but powerful.
Right. Charity, thinking of others, that directly fights selfishness. And humility, well, that helps keep pride and vanity in check.
Makes sense.
It's a constant process, though, striving to be a little bit better every day.
That's actually a comforting thought, not about being perfect, but about always growing. Okay. Now, here's another thing that really intrigued me. This connection between belief in the afterlife and how we view material possessions.
Oh, that's a good one. Kardec suggests that when we truly believe life continues after death, we're less attached to stuff.
Almost like it shifts your priorities.
Totally. When we doubt there's more beyond this life, we tend to cling to those material things.
Seeking happiness in temporary things.
Yeah, like they'll fill that void. But when you see this life as just one chapter, those things matter less.
So it's about finding meaning beyond just the physical world.
Exactly. It makes you think what truly matters in the grand scheme of things.
A lot to ponder there.
Definitely.
Now, this next one was a bit of a head-scratcher for me at first, this idea of earthly suffering as medicine.
It's a deep one, for sure. Think of it like, a tough surgery. It's painful, but it ultimately heals you.
So suffering can lead to growth.
That's the idea. Kardec even quotes the Bible, "Blessed are the afflicted, for they shall be comforted."
Powerful stuff.
It's not about enjoying suffering, but seeing it as a chance for transformation.
Almost like, have you ever gone through something really hard and come out the other side, changed for the better?
Absolutely. And it gives us a different perspective on those tough times, doesn't it? Instead of despair, there's this sense of hope.
It changes the whole story.
It really does.
Now, for a bit of a dose of reality, Kardec doesn't let us off the hook. He points out that often we are the architects of our own unhappiness. Ouch.
That's where it gets real. He's basically saying that if we trace our problems back, a lot of times they come from our own actions.
So it's not just bad luck.
Not always. It's about recognizing that we have a role in creating our circumstances, both good and bad.
So acknowledging our choices, even the not-so-great ones.
Exactly. And that's actually empowering, because if we have that power, we can change those patterns, make better choices.
It all comes back to being self-aware.
Exactly. Knowing ourselves, our strengths, and our weaknesses.
So important.
It is.
Now, let's talk about something a little more uplifting. Prayer.
Ah, yes. Kardec sees prayer as a way to connect with something bigger than ourselves, to align with a higher purpose.
Not just about asking for things.
No, it's about that connection, finding strength and guidance through that connection.
And what I like is that Kardec emphasizes sincerity, the intention behind the prayer. He even says, good thoughts are worth more than 1,000 words, which are like the noise of a mill where the heart cannot be found. Beautiful.
It's about the heart, the feeling behind the prayer.
Exactly. Not just going through the motions.
Right.
But he also gets real about it, saying that praying for forgiveness only matters if our actions change too.
Absolutely. It's one thing to say you're sorry, but another to actually change your behavior. Right.
Walk the walk.
Exactly. That's where the real transformation happens.
Now, this part really touched me. Kardec explains that even imperfect spirits find peace through prayer.
That's a beautiful thought. It shows that we all need that connection, that support, no matter where we are on our journey.
Yeah, like we're all in this together.
We are.
But here's a question many people wonder about. Can prayer change our fate? What does Kardec say about that?
He says it can't change the big things. Those are often part of a larger plan. But prayer can help us face those things with more strength and clarity.
So it's not about trying to control the universe.
No, it's about finding peace within that larger plan.
And using that connection to navigate those big events.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we have help, that we're not alone in facing those challenges.
And it's comforting to know that we still have free will. We're not just puppets.
Exactly. We make choices, but we have guidance and support.
So it's a balance.
Yes.
Another thing that stood out, Kardec says that the form of prayer doesn't matter as much as the essence.
Right. It's not about specific rituals or words. It's about that sincere desire to connect with something greater.
The heart of it. A beautiful message of unity.
It is.
But then there's this warning about power. He says those with strength and influence, you got to be careful not to abuse it.
That's a good reminder for all of us. Power comes with responsibility.
Absolutely.
Especially those in positions of authority.
True leadership is about serving others.
Exactly.
It's a good check on our ego, that's for sure.
It is.
And speaking of power dynamics, what about wealth?
Ooh, Kardec has some interesting thoughts on that. He actually says fortune can be a bigger test than poverty.
How so?
Hell, wealth, it's temporary. We can't take it with us when we go, and those who have it will be judged on how they used it.
Like, were they generous?
Exactly. It's a reminder that true wealth isn't about material possessions.
So it's more about how we use what we have.
Right.
And that ties into his comparison of humility versus ambition.
Yes. He says those who chase worldly success, they might find a different reality in the afterlife.
He actually says, he who elevates himself will be humiliated, and he who humbles himself will be elevated. Wow.
It's a reminder that true fulfillment comes from inner growth, not outward status.
Powerful stuff.
It is.
So humility over ego.
Absolutely.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about charity.
Okay.
Kardec calls it the supreme law, encompassing love, forgiveness, and compassion. He even breaks it down into 3 parts: charity in thought, word, and deed.
So it's not just about giving money.
No, it's about how we think, how we speak, and how we act.
That's a whole way of being.
Exactly. And he tells a story about a poor person sharing their bread with someone even poorer, emphasizing that the spirit behind the giving matters most.
It's about the heart, the intention.
Exactly. It's not about the amount, but the love behind it.
Beautiful.
Then he kind of calls us out, saying that if we claim to have faith but still hold on to negativity, it's a contradiction.
He's right. True faith should be reflected in our actions, right? What do you think about that?
I think we all fall short sometimes. It's a constant challenge to align our beliefs with our actions.
It is.
But it's something to strive for.
Absolutely.
That brings us to another big concept, brotherhood.
Unity. Understanding. Seeing each other as connected, regardless of our differences.
That sounds great, but what gets in the way of that?
Oh, so many things. Prejudice, fear, ignorance. These things create walls between us.
So how do we break down those walls?
It starts with recognizing our shared humanity, cultivating compassion. It's about replacing fear with understanding.
Big task.
It is, but so important.
And that's where Kardec brings in his idea of charity as the foundation for peace.
It's the opposite of selfishness. It unites us instead of dividing us.
So, in a way, love is the answer.
It's a simple way to put it, but yeah. Compassion, caring for each other, that's what brings peace.
And he leaves us with a powerful thought. Without charity, there is no salvation. What does that mean to you?
It reminds me that our actions have consequences, not just here, but in the bigger picture. It's about making choices that lead to a better world for everyone.
It all comes full circle, doesn't it?
It does.
From personal growth to making a positive impact on the world.
And it's all connected, our individual journeys and the well-being of all.
So much to think about.
There is.
Yeah.
And it all starts with that first step, choosing to be better, choosing charity, choosing love. And it all comes back to this idea of action, putting those principles into practice.
Right. Because it's easy to talk about being a good person, but living it out. That's the real
Yeah.
challenge.
And Kardec actually addresses the skeptics out there, the people who might say, spirits, come
Oh,
on.
I'm sure there are plenty of those.
He even quotes a spirit who said, they mocked at the turning tables, but they will never laugh at the resulting philosophy and ethics.
That's a good one. So basically, even if you don't believe in the whole spirit communication thing, the ethics, the message of love and self-improvement, that's universal.
Exactly. It stands on its own.
I like that.
And, to really drive these points home, Kardec includes all these stories.
Oh, the stories. This is where the book gets really interesting.
Right. He shares accounts of what spirits have experienced after passing on, what they've learned from the other side.
It's like getting a glimpse into the afterlife.
It is, and some of those stories are pretty sobering, about spirits who suffered because of their actions in their earthly lives.
Because of their pride, selfishness, lack of charity. It's almost like a warning, right?
It is a reminder that our choices have consequences that extend beyond this physical life.
It makes you think twice about how you're living, that's for sure.
It does. And it all comes back to aligning yourself with what Kardec calls God's law, that law of love and compassion.
Right. It's not about some punishing deity. It's more about understanding that our actions create certain outcomes.
Like cause and effect.
Exactly. So Spiritism provides this framework for understanding those consequences, making choices that lead to a better experience, both here and in the afterlife.
Exactly. It's about growth, evolution, both personally and spiritually.
I like that.
And one concept that I find really fascinating is this idea of a moral aroma.
A moral aroma. That's a new one. What's that all about?
Well, Kardec suggests that our actions create a kind of energy, a spiritual aroma that attracts similar energies.
So if you're putting out good vibes, you attract good vibes.
That's the idea. If we're cultivating positive qualities, acting with kindness, we draw in benevolent spirits, those who can support our growth.
Makes sense. But if you're constantly negative,
Then you might be attracting spirits that are aligned with those lower vibrations. It's like, have you ever noticed that being around certain people can leave you feeling drained or uplifted?
totally. It's like their energy rubs off on you.
Exactly. And it works on a spiritual level, too. We're constantly interacting with this world beyond our senses, and our actions influence those interactions.
So being mindful of the energy we're putting out there.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Now, I got to say, one of the toughest concepts to grasp, even after all this discussion, is the idea that suffering can be like medicine for the soul. It's hard to see it that way when you're going through something difficult.
Oh, absolutely. It requires a real shift in perspective. But what Kardec is saying is that even those painful experiences can be opportunities for growth, for learning.
Instead of seeing them as punishments.
Right. It's about choosing to lean into those challenges and see what we can learn from them, how we can transform through them.
And that takes a lot of trust, doesn't it? Trusting that there's a bigger purpose, even when we can't see it.
It does. It's about surrendering to the process, knowing that we're not alone in those struggles.
And sometimes that surrender is the hardest part.
It can be.
You know, what strikes me about all of this is how practical Kardec's teachings are. It's not just theoretical. It's about making choices that impact our lives, day to day.
That's what makes Spiritism so appealing. It's not just about believing in spirits. It's about living a more conscious, more meaningful life.
It's about taking responsibility for those choices, realizing that we have the power to shape our own destinies.
Absolutely. We're not just victims of circumstance.
And one of the key takeaways for me is this idea of self-improvement as an ongoing process, right?
Right.
It's not like you reach a certain level and you're done.
Exactly. It's a journey. We're all works in progress, constantly learning and evolving.
And Kardec provides this roadmap, these specific steps we can take to cultivate those virtues that lead to greater happiness, greater fulfillment.
He lays it all out, no guesswork needed.
I love how he uses that analogy of creating a moral aroma through
Yeah.
our actions.
Oh, yeah. That one's a classic.
It's such a powerful image that our actions have this ripple effect, attracting either positive or negative influences into our lives.
It reminds us that we're not isolated beings. We're constantly interacting with the spiritual realm, and our choices influence those interactions.
So it's like we're shaping our spiritual environment, just as we shape our physical environment.
Exactly. And it ties into that concept of suffering as medicine, too, doesn't it? Even challenging experiences can attract helpful spirits, guiding us towards growth or providing support.
That's an interesting way to look at it. It's not about being punished, but about attracting the help we need to move through those challenges.
And become stronger in the process.
Almost like having a spiritual support system.
Exactly. A team of unseen helpers, ready to guide us and offer solace. And the quality of that support, it's directly influenced by the choices we make, the energy we cultivate.
So it all comes down to choices, doesn't it? We're not just along for the ride.
Exactly. We have a say in shaping our spiritual reality just as much as our physical reality. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It brings us back to that idea, without charity, there is no salvation. Our actions matter, they have consequences.
It's not just about this life, it's about something bigger, something that continues on.
It's about recognizing that connection, the spiritual side of things,
Mhm.
and letting that guide our choices.
Exactly. Choosing love, compassion, generosity. It's not just about being nice, it's about aligning with a higher purpose.
Wow, that's pretty profound. As we wrap up this deep dive into Kardec's Spiritism, what stands out to you the most?
I think for me, it's that sense of interconnectedness. It's not just about believing in spirits, it's about seeing how everything's connected. Our actions, our energy, the unseen world, it all plays a part.
It's definitely given me a lot to think about. It's humbling, but also really empowering. Knowing that we have this power to choose, to create positive change.
It is. And even the smallest acts of kindness, those everyday choices, they matter.
So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to take these ideas and let them inspire you, guide you. Remember, even a small act of kindness can make a difference.
Absolutely. And never underestimate the power of love. It can truly change the world.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into Spiritism. We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did.
Until next time, may you find peace and purpose on your path.